Welcome to Bite Size Dental Marketing. Today I have Kristen Ashley. Kristen's been with Duckett Lab for about 4 years, and I love what you guys have done. There's such a connection between your company and ours, and the philosophies and how we approach clients. So much. I know you've been at Duckett Lab for about 4 years now, Kristen. Tell me about your journey, though. Real estate before then, and tell me a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on today. This is great. So I previously, before coming to Duckett Lad, I was a controller for a real estate development company. Kind of got my feet wet with the whole controller type vibe, reviewing financials and cash flows and all that. I've been doing accounting type work for almost 20 years. So when I came to Duckett Lad, they had a real estate department as well. And so that's kind of what brought me here. And over the years, we shifted over to dental, and I decided that would be a good path for me too. And it's been great. I really enjoy working with practice owners and just trying to help them do the best that they can do and run their business the best they can.
Now, how much, what was the mix between, helping them on the business side and therapist? What's the blend that you're at?
It's pretty intermingled.
Mm,
Sometimes I do feel like they're therapy sessions, but I love it. Sometimes people just need to say things out loud and they figure out answers to problems just by talking about it. And sometimes I don't even have to say anything. They figure it out all on their own.
mhm. The one that we find most is just around staffing. Sometimes they feel like they're held hostage by their staff. Sometimes it runs the gamut, and that's where I tend to have the most therapy sessions around, staffing and trying to hire someone, and how much they get paid and what the benefits should be. And
For
yeah,
sure.
mhm,
Especially since the pandemic, like staffing has
mm,
been a huge ordeal. Just so many people left the workforce, and just finding adequate staff to fill some roles has been really tough for a lot of practices over the last couple of years. And the pay increases. People want a lot more money for what they're doing, and a lot of practices have struggled with finding the appropriate amount to pay people to get them to stay.
mm. It, I'm glad you brought up pay. I I'm not an economist, so you'll excuse me. I lack the nomenclature, but I believe that this is an inflationary period. Is that correct?
For sure. Prices are going up, and so
Hmm.
people want to be paid more money so they can afford groceries at the store.
Now, how does the inflationary period we're currently in impact how a dentist should look to wrap up 2023, and how would they better prepare themselves for 2024?
Well, I think that not only like paying staff what they want, I think providing a culture that staff want to be in, and creating like the stickiness of people.
Mm,
If people are happy with their job, they don't tend to care quite as much about the pay. I mean, everybody's motivated by pay no matter what. But if you have a best friend at the office, you're going to be a lot more likely to stay there and feel comfortable there. So I think providing that sticky culture for your employees is important, and just checking overall expenses all the time. It's just like in your personal life, it's so easy to sign up for these things that are like $10 a month. And you get yourself into these reoccurring charges and you forget they're even there. And
mm.
the same kind of things can happen for your practice. So just staying on top of what your expenses are and making sure that there's nothing out there that's not providing you a return on your investment.
Hmm. Now, how do you work with dentists doing that? Is there a meeting cadence, or do you sort of leverage your portfolio of other dentists to say, I think these are the outlier events? How do you bring those
So
to light?
Yeah, so my clients usually sign up for a consulting type service. So I am reviewing their financials and staying on top of them on a monthly basis. And then I usually have a 1 hour call with those clients every month to look at those financials and KPIs to see how their business is doing. Are they spending too much on dental supplies? Or have labs really decreased because they bought a milling machine to control their lab costs? We look at all of those kind of things on a monthly basis. And the more you look at them, the more that you can control them.
Hmm. Mhm. Now, when you look back over the last, 6 to 8 months, what do you see as the most significant movers from a KPI standpoint?
Oh gosh.
We've talked about labor. I mean,
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. And I feel like supplies have gone up for everyone ever since COVID. You had to buy more supplies, you had to have PPE and stuff like that. And I feel like ever since then, the dollar that you're paying for these supplies has increased. So you have to account for that. I mean, like interest has gone up. So that's going to, of course, if you have loans, that's going to cost you some more money, just all
mm,
kinds of things like that. And sometimes there are things we don't even think of. If you have a loan, you don't necessarily you know what your interest is when you get that loan, but you don't necessarily stay on top of what it could be changing to as interest rates rise too.
I see. I see. How do you feel? I hear a lot of dentists say, I'm going to pay a lot in taxes, so I'm going to go buy some equipment and other things. I, Talk me through the mentality of that. Sometimes it's like, I'm going to go buy a car. It's like, man, why? Do you need a car? Like, it feels like, walk me through that, if you will.
Yeah. So the thing about taxes is it's different for everybody in every
Mhm.
situation. I think the most important thing is know your situation before you get to the end of the year so you have time to make those decisions and think about if you should spend money on something. It's not bad to pay taxes. If you paid taxes, that means you made money, you had a profitable year.
Mhm.
And nobody wants to pay taxes. I get it, but don't buy a piece of equipment you don't need. That just goes back to my previous statement. Everything you buy needs to provide a ROI for you. You need to get something out of what you spend. You don't hire an employee, expect them not to do anything. It's the same way when you buy a
Mhm.
piece of equipment. You should need it before you buy it. It is a tactic. A lot of people do though. But I would say we don't typically recommend it unless there's something a practice already needs, and it's just good timing to go ahead and buy it in December versus February.
We have a client, and I love him. He's dear to me. But every year he comes to me and says, I'm going to prepay for all my marketing for next year.
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah, you should do that. And I'm like, by the way, you've done it every year now. So what are you really accomplishing? And it's just kind of washing out. But
yeah,
every year he's like, I'm going to write you a big check, in
yeah.
December. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, I get
It's
it. My husband and I, well, we have a farm and he pre-buys like fertilizer and seed and all that stuff before the end of the year. And I think it's just because he's done it for so long. Now he has to keep doing it. You get in a cycle. And if you stop, eventually you're going to have to pay those taxes.
I, I've heard of a book, and I forget it. I'll link it out in the notes. But it was, we all make emotional decisions, and then we use facts to justify our emotions.
Yeah.
And I think back on the big changes in my life, and I certainly have been making emotional decisions for forever. Now, real talk. Come back. What should a dentist do to prepare for next year? Like what in your mind? What's the gold standard of planning for next year?
Know your numbers now. Like, I think we work with so many practices and start working with so many practices that don't even know where they're at right now. You can't go forward unless you know where you're starting from. And so I think that that's super important. Just take a look at your numbers and figure out what you want to do, where you want to go. Do you want to increase your production by 10%? And then take baby steps to get there. Jot down 3 ways that you can increase your production by 10%. I'm going to really have my staff work on recall or unscheduled treatment planning or anything like that. Just 3 little baby steps that you could do that could change that production. Um, just start thinking about what your goals should be and how you can accomplish those goals.
Huh. It is not a new trend, but it's certainly something that my clients have taken more advantage of this year more than ever. Is they've looked at what they're referring out and then worked with the team to bring a specialist in house. And instead
Yeah,
of referring out 100% of the treatment and not getting anything back, they're getting to keep 30 to 50% of the overall treatment. And I have some practices that are bringing in an oral surgeon, and the oral surgeon's having a $20,000 day, and the dentist is getting $8,000 for not even coming into the office. And that's
sure.
such an easy way to boost your profitability as well.
For sure, for sure. Anything that you can do, any tiny changes that you can do that don't add a ton of extra expense, but really add on top of that collections and production are game changers.
Mhm, mhm. Now, when you look at the numbers, now do you drive like so I like what you said, like jot down three ideas. Is that something you then work with the dentist on? So if they said, okay, I'm gonna work on hygiene recall, or I'm gonna, change how I do treatment presentation. How then do you integrate that into your meetings with them?
Sure. So, what I like to do is I have kind of a software that we use that tracks any kind of KPIs or indicators that clients want to start tracking. So, if you want to know, how many new patients you're bringing in, or if you want to track your recall, all you have to do is give me some kind of information out of your dental software, or we have programs that can link with some dental softwares to provide that information to me, and I start tracking it. You can't get better if you don't see where you've come from and see where you're going. So you have to track those numbers, and you have to have them in your face all the time, looking at them. And then we talk about ways to increase them in our meetings and things that they can do to change that number.
Hmm. Now, what are the top three or five things that you think a dentist should be tracking monthly?
Collection percentage is
Mm,
huge. And it relates back to so many things. If you're not tracking how much of your collections you're bringing, how much of your production you're collecting, then you're not utilizing all of your resources. It tells you that in your dental software, and you're missing income.
mm,
All that AR is just stacking up, and it's work that you've already done. You should collect the money for the work that you've done. That's super important. And the more of that that you can get done before the end of the year, the better. It's all income that you have produced, so you should collect it. That is a big one that I like to look at. And then, we like to look at a lot of overhead items and track those expenses. Are you spending too much on employees and staffing? Are you overpaying for dental supplies? And just kind of diving into those key overhead items and what they're looking like every month.
mm. Now, uh, it's been a while since I've been into any form of accounting class, and thank God I'm in charge of pictures and videos. But uh, uh, in my understanding, there are things like rent which are fixed and they don't really change with the number of patients I see, and so my percentage of rent is the value stays there, but obviously
Sure.
as my production goes up or my collections goes up, the percentage goes down. Now, there are things like lab fees and other things that I would expect to increase if I adjusted to a different type of procedures, if I were doing more implants, if I were doing more cosmetics. Uh, How do you determine what that should be for practice? Are you looking at the codes they're doing or the type of industry they're doing? And how do you determine what those percentages should be and for a healthy practice?
We kind of look at industry standards. For labs, they can be anywhere from like 8 to 10% is a good
Mm,
industry standard. And we take into account, does this office solely focus on doing a lot of high dollar procedures, crowns, bridges, implants, things like that? Are they naturally just going to have higher lab fees? And we look at those things and we set goals for those percentages with clients on a yearly basis. So they have some input into what those goals are. We use the industry standards as kind of a guideline,
I see.
but they are in control of what those numbers really are. And we're just helping them hone in on those numbers and get them where they want to be. Um, I think the industry standard is a good guide if you want to have a great mix of services that you're providing. You always want to have a little bit of that general dentistry mixed in. I feel like it's a nice, stable income, and it keeps patients coming. You know, if you have people coming in for their hygiene checks, they're going to need billings. And so
Mhm.
it's just an immediate referral right to your other services.
Nice. Now, what is a perfect client to you?
Oh, gosh.
Because for us, it's someone who's already shown some success because it's hard to market. I can't invent a story. I can only tell a story. So there has to be something there. It's someone who has a fairly stable staff because I think that shows some behavioral, stability, if you will, to be able to keep staff year over year and things like that. And I think they have to understand, at least be open to understanding the value of marketing. And I think I can work
Yeah.
with everybody else. So for us, like when we think of an ideal client, they don't have to be a $4 million shop or a $1 million shop, but they had to be. There has to be some, something there to tell a
Yeah.
story about. What's your version of that? What's the clients you're like, man, I'm so excited to talk to them.
I I want the clients that want more. I want them to have this drive. They want to figure out what's going wrong and do better. They're interested in the meetings, and there's lots of conversation going on. It's not just me spewing out numbers. I don't want to do that either. I mean,
Mm.
I like accounting, but I don't want to just talk about numbers for an hour. Um, I think that the clients that are super engaged and maybe do have a couple issues or things they want to do better, those are the fun ones, because those are the ones that I can dive in and help and um, provide advice and guidance on what they can do to get better.
That's so well said, Kristen. I like that answer. So they need to be fun and engaging,
Yeah.
have some issues that they know about to work through. All right, I like it. I like it. I like it
They got to be open too, because sometimes I may tell them things they don't want to hear. So,
for sure. No, I think that's the. I heard a saying one time, and I do not know who to attribute it to, and I will get it wrong, but it was basically like the measure of a person. The measure of a person is how much truth they can take.
yeah.
And I think about that as we're talking to clients sometimes, and we will now and again get a client who, is in an office that needs to be cleaned up, or something maybe not ideal, and they're like, I only want to do full, high end cosmetic cases. And I'm like, I think we need to have a conversation, and you need to invest some money in your practice before I
Yeah.
can do that. But yeah, I think about that a lot, and I'm sure for you, you're having much harder conversations around the money, and because you're getting into how much they take home personally and things like that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Or I'm telling them, hey, you're spending way too much on staff. Is there a person there that maybe isn't cut out for this? Who's the weakest link? And if people are close with their staff, they sometimes don't want to hear that. It's tough news. But like I said, it all goes back to what is providing you a
Hmm.
return on your investment.
Now, Kristen, do you have a stance on spouses in the office, working in the office? Are
I
you pro?
don't. I,
No,
I, I
you're
don't really
neutral.
have a stance. I feel like it totally is about the relationship between
Mm.
spouses. And I've worked for a lot of people that are spouses and in the office with spouses and kind of, who's my boss? Is it this one or this one? And
Hmm.
it is tough. And I feel like you, as a practice owner, if your spouse is in the office with you and you're working together, you're going to have to give a little bit of grace to your employees because that's a tough position for them to be in
It is
too.
tough.
Um,
Hmm.
but I think that some people can make it work and some people can do great at it. And I'm not opposed to it at all. I never thought I could work with my husband, but COVID happened and here we are sharing an office at home some days and we're figuring it out and we haven't killed each other yet.
No, very well said. I think you're right. It's the balance, but I do. It does create some complexity for the staff because I think there's two bosses.
There is, and you feel like you kind of have to walk on eggshells sometimes, and that can be uncomfortable. So I think just being really open with your staff from the forefront about that when there's two spouses or when there's spouses is the most important thing.
Well, Kristen, what's the best way to get in touch with you if there was some young Thundercat dentist out there that wants to make his practice amazing or her practice amazing? How do they?
Oh, check out our website. There's a form on there that you can fill out, and it comes straight to our sales department, and they'll reach out to you and get an appointment set up, and just kind of go from there and see what your needs are. We have several different levels of services that we provide. We have a CFO level service if you want to look at the big picture items out there. The controller level service is kind of what I do and meet with clients on a monthly basis, like I said. And then we have just a bookkeeping package also. If you're not quite there with the controller level and you just need to see your books first, we have that option as well.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much for your time. I've very much enjoyed our conversation, and I think the world of y'all's firm, and you do such great work, and I'm sure honored to have you guys on the as a guest.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed this connection we've made with each other. It's kind of awesome that we're trying to do the same thing for the same kind of people. I love that.
Yeah, I love working with dentists. Some are more challenging than others, but by and large, I think around where I came from in my life, I know that private equity is moving in, and I know consolidation's happening, and I think that I'm my mission around helping private practitioners become more successful in a challenging space is something that resonates with me. And yeah, I like that. I like that there's resources like yourself out there that they can have. A true professional who understands the finance side and how to set them up for success. I think that's such a value, and I think they need to build a team around them of real professionals.
Yeah,
Yeah. So my hat's off to all the work you do. Thanks, Kristen.
thank you. Thanks.